I don't really have any thoughts right now. What prompted me to do this is that, it's Monday, July 6, 2020. We're at the beginning of what's going to be a hard and possibly decisive month. The medical community is working around the clock, doing everything that they possibly can to make progress on this startling, sad, difficult situation. People who know me are not likely to be confused by the sort of activity that goes on about me. So it's hard for me to choose my words because of this divided listening capacity. Some of the people who taunt me online don't even believe what they're saying, they just do it. And those are the ones I'm thinking of when I say to peers who it doesn't even need to be said to that I'm not saying I told you to anybody. In fact, not that many people are even openly entertaining the idea that COVID was a bomb. But everybody is aware, really aware, that I have been warning everyone that the activity out of what was called the Maxwell House on Mount Desert Island in 1988 clarified for me that the AIDS development was a plan, that it was intentional. And this fact was fended off by the police and legal authorities with a tall tale, pornographic narrative that was developed by the people who did it about me that I thought was much more revealing than the content they were espousing, the fact that it existed, that this plan was set up, and nobody wanted to entertain that idea, so it seemed. Maybe they knew and just wanted to let it happen. And of course, I'm concerned that there are people who know and just want to let this happen. Just as I said before, I think we're dealing with the criminally insane. We cannot afford to ignore and just let happen either of these terrible developments. Um, they fall into the category of virological warfare. And I believe the indecency of it is that a world council of dictators agreed to it. And I think, you know, fear tightens the noose of silence. And people expect from me to say something. Before, I was harrowingly suffering from impacted neurological injuries. And of course, this was ignored in favor of a diversionary diagnosis. And the people who sought to humiliate me were doing things to me that were callous, weird sexual things, and so on, targeting me in my home by way of an attack prostitute who became engaged to be married to me, in whom I confided and who I thought was partnering with me to help warn people, but nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, the kill count of her achievement is rather high when you factor in this bonus attack. So, where does that leave me? I mean, I'm jeopardized. I was jeopardized before. What it leaves me is face to face with people who still very caustically think they have the right to incinerate a white symbol of white lives not mattering. They're a concept art sociology group who are not at all racist. They want young, healthy, black, militant people to help them build an arc, survive COVID and AIDS, and team up with them. They're known as the Green Party. They're criminally insane. They're psychotic. You can't reason with them about anything. And they send these messages that there's a race progress issue involved. We can make race progress and we can make ecological progress by insisting that it's important and taking care to do that. We don't need the people who don't care about that using nasty weapons to, population control comes up in ecology and lament that there's not population control. This comes from people who say openly that the world would be a better place if Hitler won. I mean, that's not where I come from. JFK was president when I was a child. I remembered him. I'm not stupid about what happened to him. I've studied it. He was a man who was trying to talk to people about adapting our behaviors and learning to flourish together. It was called cohabitation or I don't want to use the word co-prosperity because that was the Japanese invasion idea that went around when they were clobbering Vietnam with the French as the Axis powers that we went and helped afterwards, of course. But coexistence is the word I wanted. Yeah, and people have made a mockery of that in part because they succeeded in killing him. They killed Dag Hammarskjöld, the UN General Secretary that year, I believe, and a man named Mbrakis in Greece, liberal leaders. And there's been a terrible sense that people who talk are talking their way out of a fight with these wonderful pieces of you know what who ride around with clubs and hit them in the back of the head. I myself was attacked blindside as a child by these courageous individuals. You know, there's evidence that the person who was hired to torture me was working with Charles Bronson. I mean, how magnificent and macho is this character if he has to do that to a 12-year-old child? I mean, I think it's folly to put all of this grand admiration for people who are absurd. And now we've entered this situation where we're negotiating with the lies we've told ourselves about these powerful figures in office and what they're really doing in order to assure ourselves that they intend to allow our kids to go back to school someday. I mean, President Trump is President No Lives Matter. I mean, we sit here arguing, do all lives matter? Do black lives matter? Of course they do. But he's this pervert, who says no lives matter, makes a mockery of us. It doesn't really play out to me as something noble and admirable. And we're supposed to be all afraid we'll get shot for saying we're concerned for our children. I mean, it's not particularly inspiring. Now, philosophy preserving disagreement as a fundamental truism about the philosophy of mankind's pursuit of political order by the reasonable processes of informed discussion known as democracy, disagreement and preservation of dissent. It goes against the grain to hear that people are being beaten up for their views, that books are being burned. I mean, we haven't quite seen that yet, but you know, it's to me, it's not a particularly terrible thing to hear that Donald Trump wants to prevent Confederate statues from being destroyed by sledgehammers. He wants to put them in a garden of the past that he can walk around in, apparently dressed like Elvis Presley with gold zippers and pistols and rattling his, saber and his gold nightie at night. I mean, who cares? I mean, preserve them. Mark them ad hoc BS. There are things that don't stand for us. They don't need to be in public display, but they don't need to be destroyed either. And what concerns me is that we're setting an example that can be evoked by these perverts to burn poetry, to shoot poets like myself, like Bobby Kennedy, shoot somebody who was simply trying to humanize the traffic of ideas in the United States. A lot of conservative people were not down with that. What happened was that it codified itself into the way we look at things with phrases like the nature of reality. The nature of reality was this dreadful, silly stupidism that used to get played over and over again at the University of Pittsburgh, in the New Republic magazine, and it was a code for if you speak up against power, you will get knocked down. The nail that sticks up gets hammered down, the Japanese like to say. Well, this isn't Japan. You know, just because we rescued the French Axis, who were allies of Japan during World War II and allies of Hitler of World War II in Vietnam for some godforsaken reason in Vietnam, it doesn't mean that we're adopting the Axis system for ourselves. Now, you can see that there's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of adoption of the Axis system. But fundamentally, we don't that way. I mean, you talk to conservative bankers, people in charge of property management, real estate, and they got up one after another in tears and delivered eulogies to Bobby Kennedy. Now, something has snapped where we've seen Kennedys disappear, killed, and nobody said anything, and people don't think that's important. But this is a trophy family. This is a first family. And we can't let poachers turn them into trophy kills this way. Tulsi Gabbard bears some responsibility for what happened in Massachusetts. And I'm not going to stop talking about this stuff just because nobody else is. I'm a Kennedy kid. I don't like what happened. But I don't think that we're doing anything right by destroying public monuments. They should be preserved as former public monuments. This is what this society was, and this is what we are now because of democratic processes, not because of totalitarian nonsense. And I don't think we're setting an example for informed discussion that way. That's just my opinion. What else could it be? It can't be anything else. It's just a person's opinion. You don't have to lose sleep because somebody has an opinion that's different than yours. I know not that many people feel that way, but the ones who do are in power. That scares some people, that pisses some people off, that rattles people, whatever. They're getting what they want from it. They got people into the streets by choking George Floyd, who was a martyr to the pandemic. And one of the messages this said was that these kids don't care that there's a geriatricide going on. They care about their pomp and circumstances as, you know, people who are sensitive about the issues. But they're not sensitive in the sense of considering the fact that there's older people who are at risk because they go out and high risk behaviors at a time when we need to wait and think carefully about what we're doing. I know that those people are going to say, well, if you don't protest George Floyd because you're afraid of COVID, then you killed him. I didn't kill him. I would never hurt a man like that. You know, it's absurd. It's absurd and it's obscene that that happened. Everybody realizes that. Even Donald Trump managed to say something that was touching about that situation. But what we can't afford to do is just take for granted that because young people are less mortally at risk because of COVID, that it's safe for them to be doing these things in crowds when the elderly are extremely vulnerable. The Earth movement has had a person of the year in Greta Thunberg, who spent her capital gains helping the children of Yemen. I think that's wonderful. But she specified from COVID, it's the elderly in Yemen who are most at risk of COVID, Greta. And you're making it look like the elderly don't matter. You know, I loved my grandparents. And even if your grandfather has passed away, even if you don't know your grandparents, you should try to be able to project into the circumstances where somebody might love their grandparents. Okay? And they preserve knowledge and hand down wisdom. And they empower. And many of them are black. And if black lives matter, so do theirs.